A poor beggar saved a beautiful lady right there on the street from men who were seconds away from taking her, but what no one knew in that moment was that the quiet, dirt-stained man risking his life had no idea she was a powerful CEO worth billions. And even more shocking, that same beautiful lady would soon fall deeply in love with him and later propose with a jaw-dropping $50 billion dowry. People froze as it happened. The beggar moved with unexpected speed, shielding the beautiful lady as danger closed in. His torn clothes hiding instincts that didn't belong to the streets, but to something far more dangerous. While she, elegant, composed, and clearly not ordinary, looked at him not with fear, but with something else she didn't understand yet. Why would a poor beggar risk everything to save a stranger on the street like her? How did he move like someone trained, not broken by life? And why did the beautiful lady, who was secretly a CEO, feel something shift in her heart at that exact moment? Something strong enough to one day offer him a $50 billion dowry. Ethan Cole sat at the edge of the crosswalk where the city never truly paused, his back resting against a cold concrete pole as a rush of expensive cars and hurried lives blurred past him, unnoticed by everyone except him. His clothes were worn, his beard uneven, his shoes nearly torn apart, yet his eyes remained sharp to sharp for a man the world had labeled as a beggar, watching movements, reflections, patterns, like someone who once lived in a world where noticing the wrong thing too late meant someone didn't make it home. A black luxury car rolled to a precise stop just across from him, its polished surface reflecting the city's chaos in perfect silence. And without turning his head, Ethan shifted his gaze slightly to the glass window beside him, using it as a mirror, the way he had been trained years ago. Inside the car sat a woman whose presence alone separated her from everything around her. Sophia Lawrence, though no one on that street knew her name. A CEO whose decisions moved billions, whose signature could change markets overnight. Yet in that moment, she looked distant, almost detached, like someone carrying a life too heavy to show on her face. "Stop here," Sophia said calmly to the driver, her voice controlled, practiced, revealing nothing of the pressure behind it. And as the driver hesitated, slightly, trained never to question her, was aware of the risks, she added, "I'll walk the rest." A habit she had formed not out of simplicity, but out of a quiet rebellion against the cage her wealth had built around her. Years ago, after her father's sudden death left her alone against a board that tried to strip her inheritance, she learned to walk through fear instead of hiding from it, building Lawrence Holdings from fragments, while enduring betrayals that taught her one rule: never depend on anyone. She stepped out, heels touching the pavement, with quiet authority, the kind that came not from appearance but from survival. And as the car pulled away, the world swallowed her into its ordinary rhythm. But not everything was ordinary. Ethan's attention shifted not to her but to the car behind hers. It had stopped too close to a line, and the man inside it wasn't watching the road, he was watching her. Ethan's fingers pressed slightly against the ground, a small movement no one else would notice, but one that anchored him as something old stirred beneath the surface. A fragment of memory slipped through, a voice in his ear, sharp and urgent. "Cole," confirmed the tale, and his own hesitation, just 1 second too long, followed by silence that never left him. He blinked once, pushing it back, but the feeling remained. This was not random. Sophia adjusted her sleeve as she began walking, unaware of the timing behind her, unaware that every step she took was being measured by someone else. And behind her, the car door opened quietly, the man stepping out with controlled movements, his pace matching hers, not too fast, not too slow. Ethan stood, not suddenly, not enough to draw attention, just enough. "Don't," he muttered under his breath, though no one heard him, his body already responding before his thoughts fully formed, the instinct to intervene clashing with the life he had chosen to live hidden, detached, uninvolved. But something about the angle of the man's shoulders, the way his hand hovered too close to his jacket, told a story Ethan couldn't ignore. Sophia passed close to him, and for a brief second, their worlds brushed against each other. She caught a glimpse of him, just a beggar, she thought at first, but there was something in his stillness that didn't match his appearance. Something controlled, something aware, and though she kept walking, a faint crease formed between her brows, like her instincts had whispered something her mind hadn't yet understood. Behind her, the man's hand slipped slightly into his jacket. Ethan's heartbeat slowed. That was wrong. Everything about that was wrong. A van turned the corner too fast, its dark windows hiding more than they revealed, its speed breaking the rhythm of the street. And in that split second, Ethan saw the pattern connect: the car, the man, the van, pieces of a setup unfolding exactly the way he had seen before in a life he tried to bury. "Move," Ethan said sharply as he stepped forward and grabbed Sophia's wrist. She barely had time to react. "What are you?" The van screeched. The man lunged. And suddenly, the normal street became something else entirely. Sophia's breath caught as Ethan pulled her forward, his grip firm, controlled, not desperate but precise, like he had done this before. And behind them, footsteps accelerated, closing the distance faster than she expected. "You weren't supposed to see them," Ethan said under his breath, his voice low, almost to himself. Sophia's heart pounded. What does that mean? But Ethan didn't answer, because in the reflection of a nearby car window, he saw it clearly now. They weren't just following her. They were coming for her. And this time, he wasn't going to hesitate. The man didn't hesitate again. As the van screeched to a halt at an angle that blocked half the street, its sliding door burst open, and a second figure stepped out, his movements coordinated with the one already behind Sophia. This wasn't random. It was timed, rehearsed, executed with precision, and Ethan felt it instantly. The same cold pattern recognition that had once made him one of the best. "Stay behind me," Ethan said, his voice low but firm as he shifted Sophia slightly backward without even looking at her. "I don't understand what is happening." Sophia's voice trembled, not out of weakness, but from the sudden collapse of control, something she had spent years building. Boardrooms, negotiations, hostile takeovers, she had mastered them all. But this was chaos she couldn't calculate. "You're being taken," Ethan replied shortly, his eyes already tracking the first attacker's foot placement, the second man's angle, the distance between them and the van. The man behind them lunged first, faster this time, his hand reaching directly for Sophia's arm. But Ethan moved before contact was made, his body pivoting sharply as his hand shot out, intercepting the wrist mid-motion and twisting it just enough to break momentum. The attacker grunted, caught off guard not by the resistance, but by the precision. This wasn't luck. This was training. Sophia's breath hitched as she watched the shift happen in real time, the quiet beggar disappearing, replaced by someone else entirely, someone controlled, dangerous, and terrifyingly calm. The second attacker stepped forward from the van, pulling something metallic from his waistband, not fully visible yet, but enough to spike the tension in the air. And Ethan's eyes flickered toward it for less than a second, long enough to confirm the threat, short enough not to lose control of the man already in his grip. "Run when I say," Ethan muttered. "What about you?" Sophia asked instinctively. Ethan didn't answer, because the first attacker recovered quicker than expected, swinging his free arm toward Ethan's face. But Ethan ducked slightly, releasing the wrist only to drive his shoulder forward, slamming into the man's chest with enough force to send him stumbling backward into the side of the van. The second man advanced, faster now, his patience gone, and the metallic object in his hand caught the lighter knife. Sophia froze for half a second too long. Ethan noticed. "Now," he said sharply. And this time, she ran. Her heels struck the pavement unevenly as adrenaline replaced composure, her mind racing with fragments that refused to connect. Who were these men? Why her? And how was the man she had just passed on the street suddenly fighting like someone trained for war? Behind her, the sound of impact echoed. Ethan stepped into the second attacker's path, closing the distance before the knife could fully come into play, his hand locking onto the man's wrist. redirecting the blade's trajectory just inches from his own side. And for a brief moment, their eyes met recognition, flickering in the attacker's gaze. That hesitation. It was small, but Ethan saw it, and that told him something far more dangerous than the weapon itself. These men weren't just hired. They knew what they were doing. Wrong target, the attacker muttered under his breath, almost like a warning. Ethan's grip tightened. Then call it off. The man smirked faintly, even as he struggled. Too late for that. Ethan reacted instantly, twisting the wrist harder until the knife clattered to the ground, then driving his elbow into the man's ribs with controlled force, not to kill, not to maim, but to disable. The attacker staggered, but didn't fall, reinforcing what Ethan already suspected: these weren't amateurs. Behind them, the first man recovered again, reaching into his jacket, this time not for a phone, not for a signal, but for something heavier. Ethan stepped back slightly, recalculating distance, timing, exit routes. His eyes flickered briefly in the direction Sophia had run, ensuring she had created enough space, and for a fraction of a second, something unfamiliar crossed his face. Not fear, not hesitation, but concern, a dangerous distraction. The second attacker took advantage of it, lunging forward again, but Ethan adjusted mid-motion, shifting his stance and redirecting the force, sending the man crashing into the side of the van once more. Harder this time. Who sent you? Ethan demanded, his voice sharper now. Neither man answered. Instead, the first attacker finally pulled out what he had reached for: not a gun, a communicator. And that changed everything. Package compromised, he said quickly into it. Unexpected interference. Ethan's expression darkened slightly. Unexpected. That meant this operation had been planned without accounting for him. Good. But it also meant there was someone else behind this. Someone watching. Sophia slowed several meters away, turning despite herself, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she watched the scene unfold, her mind struggling to reconcile the image before her: the beggar who had grabbed her moments ago, now moving with precision, control, and something else, something that made her feel both safe and uneasy at the same time. Ethan, she called out before she could stop herself. The name left her lips instinctively, even though she didn't remember him telling her. Ethan's head turned slightly at the sound, just enough. And in that exact moment, the attacker, with the communicator, gave a subtle signal. From inside the van, a third figure shifted. Ethan saw it too late. The moment Ethan's head turned at the sound of his name, the rhythm of the street shifted, and from inside the van, a third man stepped out, calm, controlled, and far more dangerous than the others. He didn't rush. He didn't reach for a weapon. He simply watched Ethan like someone who already knew how this would end. You always did have a problem walking away, the man said, quietly. Ethan stilled, not visibly but enough. A memory cut through him like a blade. Dark corridors, silent operations, a voice in his earpiece. Cole, hesitate again. Someone dies. That voice, it matched. Sophia, several steps away, felt the tension change instantly. This wasn't just an attack anymore. This was history. You know him, she called, her voice shaking despite her effort to stay composed. Ethan didn't answer her. His eyes stayed locked on the third man. I left, he said calmly. That was the end of it. The man smiled faintly, stepping closer. You don't leave something like that, Ethan. You disappear, or you get pulled back. Behind him, the first two attackers stopped advancing. They didn't need to move. The balance of power had shifted. Whoever this man was, he was in charge. Sophia's heart pounded harder now, not just from fear, but from confusion. The beggar who had saved her wasn't just skilled. He was known, feared even, and somehow she had stepped into something much bigger than herself. Who are you? She asked, her voice louder this time. The man glanced at her briefly, his gaze sharp, assessing, not curious, calculating. That's the question you should have asked before getting involved with him, he replied. Ethan stepped slightly in front of her, blocking the man's view without thinking. She's not part of this. The man's smile deepened. She became part of it the moment you chose her. Those words hit harder than they should have, because they carried truth. Ethan felt it, and though Sophia didn't fully understand it, she felt it too. That invisible line had already been crossed. Call it off, Ethan said again. Firmer now, his stance shifting subtly into something more dangerous. The man tilted his head, almost amused. You still think you have that authority? A pause. Then he spoke again, softer, deadlier. Take her. Everything snapped back into motion. One attacker rushed towards Sophia, faster and more aggressive now, while the other shifted to flank Ethan. The street, once noisy and indifferent, now felt like a stage where something precise and violent was unfolding. Sophia stepped back, panic rising. This was real, too real, and for the first time in years, she felt completely out of control. Ethan moved instantly. He intercepted the closest attacker, slamming into him with force and driving him back into the van, using his body as a barrier, while his eyes tracked the second man's movement. Run, Ethan ordered sharply, but Sophia didn't move, not immediately. Something held her there, not logic, not safety, but something emotional, something instinctive. She had just met this man, yet walking away felt wrong, like leaving behind something unfinished. Go, Ethan snapped, louder this time. That broke it. Sophia turned and ran, her steps quick and uneven as she pushed through the growing crowd, her mind racing with questions she didn't have answers to. Behind her, the fight intensified. Ethan allowed himself one glance in her direction just to be sure she was creating distance, just one glance. But the third man saw it, and in that moment, he understood something valuable. Ethan hadn't changed as much as he claimed. You still care, the man said quietly. Ethan turned back, his expression colder now, sharper, any softness gone. No, he replied. But the denial came a fraction too fast, and they both knew it. Sophia didn't stop running until the noise behind her faded into something distant and unreal, her breath uneven, her steps slowing, as the crowded street swallowed her completely. Yet even as she tried to blend in, her mind refused to settle, because nothing about what just happened made sense. Beggars didn't fight like that, didn't move like that, didn't get called by name by men who clearly weren't ordinary. She turned into a quieter lane, pressing her hand briefly against the wall as she steadied herself, her chest rising and falling. But her thoughts weren't on the danger anymore, they were on him. Ethan, she whispered unconsciously, the name lingering on her lips as if it carried weight she didn't yet understand. A black SUV pulled up beside her within minutes. Her security team. Mum, are you all right? One of them asked quickly, stepping out, his tone controlled, but urgent. Sophia straightened almost immediately, her composure returning like a switch, flipping back into place. I'm fine, she said, her voice calm again, the CEO returning to the surface, but her eyes betrayed something else, something unsettled. You weren't supposed to leave the vehicle, the man continued carefully. We detected unusual movement in the area. Sophia's gaze sharpened slightly. Detected? Then why weren't you there before it happened? The man hesitated, just for a second. That was all she needed to notice. Foreshadowing slipped quietly into place. This wasn't just a random security lapse. Something had been late or delayed. I want full footage, she said firmly, stepping into the SUV. Every angle, every second. Yes, Mum. As the vehicle pulled away, Sophia leaned back slightly, her fingers tightening against her palm, replaying everything in her mind: the attackers, the van, the third man, and Ethan. The way he moved, the way he spoke, the way he looked at danger, like he knew it, not feared it, knew it. Back on the street, the tension hadn't disappeared, it had only narrowed. Ethan stood facing the third man now, his breathing controlled, his focus absolute, while the other two attackers recovered slowly, circling again, but keeping their distance this time. You should have stayed gone, the man said calmly. Ethan didn't respond immediately, his eyes scanning, calculating, noting the shift in their formation, the patience creeping into their approach. This wasn't about rushing anymore. It was about control. Who sent you? Ethan asked instead. The man smiled slightly. You already know how this works. You don't get names. You get consequences. A flicker of the past pressed harder now. Missions without questions. Targets without context. Orders that didn't need explanations. The same structure. The same silence. Ethan exhaled slowly. I'm not part of that anymore. The man tilted his head. You became part of it again, the moment you interfered. That truth settled heavily in the space between them, because it wasn't just about the fight. It was about exposure. Ethan had been seen. Identified. And somewhere, someone would be watching now. Inside the SUV, Sophia stared at the tablet placed in her hand as the footage began to load, her eyes scanning the screen with the same sharpness she used in boardrooms. Except this time, the stakes felt different. Personal. The video played. She watched herself step out of the car, watched the man behind her, watched Ethan, frame by frame. And then she paused. It zoomed in. Ethan's face, not the dirt, not the beard. His eyes. Focused. Alert. Trained. Her fingers hovered slightly over the screen. This man, she said slowly, her voice quieter now, more thoughtful. Find him. The security officer nodded. Yes, ma'am, but Sophia added something else, almost under her breath, before anyone else does. Back on the street, the third man took a step back, signaling something unseen. This isn't over, he said calmly. Ethan didn't move. It is for today. A faint smile. You always think short term. Another step back. Then, next time, we won't miss. The van door slid shut. The attackers retreated. And just like that, the chaos dissolved as quickly as it had come, leaving behind only silence and unanswered questions. Ethan stood still for a moment longer, his body slowly releasing tension, but his mind already racing ahead, connecting dots that painted a much larger picture than what had just happened. They found me, he muttered quietly. Not just physically. Systematically. And if they found him, then Sophia wasn't just a target anymore. She was leveraged. Hours later, as the city lights replaced daylight, Sophia sat alone in her penthouse, the skyline stretching endlessly before her, yet her attention remained fixed on a single paused frame on her screen. Ethan, mid-motion, eyes locked on danger. 4 years, she had built her life on control, on calculated risks, on knowing every variable before making a move. But today something entered her world that didn't follow rules, didn't ask permission, didn't fit, and instead of pushing it away, she leaned into it. Who are you, Ethan? She whispered softly. Because deep down she already knew this wasn't over. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't want it to be. Sophia didn't sleep that night, not because she was afraid, but because something about the man on that street refused to leave her mind. The footage kept replaying in her head. Not the attack, not the van, not even the third man, but Ethan. The way he moved before danger fully revealed itself. The way he positioned himself without thinking. The way he chose to step in when everyone else stepped away. By morning, her decision was already made. Cancel my first meeting, she said calmly, stepping out of her car before the driver could even respond. Ma'am. The driver hesitated, confused. I said cancel it, she repeated, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. This wasn't business. This was personal. The street looked exactly the same as it had the day before. Busy, loud, indifferent, but to Sophia, it felt different now, like she was walking into a place that held answers she needed. Her eyes scanned carefully, and then she saw him. Same spot. Same posture. Same silence. Ethan sat like nothing had happened, like the chaos of yesterday had been erased, his presence blending again into the background of a world that refused to notice him. Sophia walked toward him slowly, deliberately. She stopped a few steps away. You could have died, she said. Ethan didn't look up immediately. So could you. That's not the point. He glanced at her now, his expression unreadable. It usually is. A brief silence followed, but this one wasn't empty. It was charged, filled with unspoken questions and quiet observations. Sophia studied him more closely this time, not as a passerby, not as someone curious, but as someone trying to understand. Up close, the details became clearer. The dirt was real, the wear was real, but beneath it, something didn't match, something controlled, something deliberate. "You're not what you look like," she said. Ethan's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Neither are you." That caught her off guard, not because he said it, but because he said it without hesitation, without fear. "You know who I am," she said quietly. Ethan shrugged. "I saw your wallet. And that doesn't change anything for you." "No." The answer came too easily. To honestly. Sophia felt something shift inside her again, that same unfamiliar feeling from yesterday. Stronger now, harder to ignore. People usually change the moment they knew her status, their tone, their posture, their intentions. But he didn't. "Why?" she asked. Ethan looked away briefly, his gaze settling somewhere distant, like he was searching for a simpler answer than the truth. "Because it doesn't change what I saw," he said finally. "You were in danger." A faint memory surfaced in Sophia's mind years ago, standing in a boardroom full of men, twice her age, all of them questioning her ability to lead, to survive, to carry her father's legacy. She had learned then that most people didn't see her, they saw what she represented. Power, money, opportunity. But Ethan, he had seen none of that. Only her. Sophia sat down beside him. Not carefully, not cautiously. Just naturally. It was the first time in years she had sat on a street like this. The rough surface beneath her completely out of place with the life she lived. Yet somehow, it felt grounding. "You didn't answer my question yesterday," she said. "Which one?" "Why you came back." Ethan exhaled slowly, his fingers brushing lightly against his knee. A small movement that hinted at something deeper beneath the surface. "I told you," he said. "Because I didn't last time." "That's not an answer," she pressed gently. This time, he didn't respond immediately, and that silence said more than words. Foreshadowing settled quietly. Ethan's past wasn't just complicated, it was unfinished, and whatever had happened back then wasn't something he had escaped. It was something still waiting. Sophia shifted slightly, her voice softer now. "They knew you." Ethan nodded once. "Yeah, who are they?" His jaw tightened slightly. "People you don't want to know." "That's not my decision to make," she said, her tone firm again. The CEO slipping back in. Ethan turned to look at her fully this time, his expression sharper. "It is if it keeps you alive." The words landed heavier than expected, not as a warning, but as concern. A brief silence stretched again, but this one felt different, less guarded, more connected. Sophia reached into her bag and pulled out a small container. Food. She placed it beside him. "You should eat," she said. Ethan glanced at it, then at her. "I'm fine." "You're not," she replied simply. Another pause. Then, surprisingly, he took it, not out of need, but acknowledgement. As he opened it, Sophia watched him closely, not just what he did, but how he did it, controlled, measured, like every action had intention behind it. And the more she observed, the clearer it became. This man wasn't broken. He was hiding. "Ethan," she said softly. He looked up. "Whatever you're running from." She hesitated. Then finished it anyway. "It's not finished, is it?" Ethan held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary, then looked away. And that was all the answer she needed. Across the street, unnoticed by both of them, a parked car sat quietly. Inside, someone watched. Not moving, not interfering, just observing, because this was far from over. The morning air was crisp, but Sophia hardly noticed. Her mind was consumed, not with meetings or mergers, but with Ethan, how he had moved, how he had fought, how he had simply been there. She replayed the footage again, frame by frame, zooming in on the dirt on his clothes, the focused gaze, the tension in his muscles, and every time she saw him, the questions multiplied. Who was he really? And why did it feel like he carried the weight of the world in his shoulders, even as a beggar? She found herself walking the streets again, drawn to the place where she had first encountered him. The city looked indifferent, bustling as usual, but every corner now held fragments of yesterday. The screech of the van, the glint of a knife, the third man's calm menace. Sophia paused at a small cafe across from the street, scanning for any sign of him, and then she saw movement, a shadow slipping past the crowd with deliberate grace. Ethan Doty sat at a corner table, head low, eyes scanning. The dirt was still there, but beneath it, there was a sharpness, a control she had only glimpsed before. She approached cautiously. "Ethan," she said softly. His head lifted, a flicker of recognition passing in his eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't look away. He just waited. "You didn't have to come back," she said, sliding into the chair opposite him. "You could have disappeared." "I couldn't," he said simply. "Not after yesterday." His eyes flicked to her briefly, then back to the street outside, as if scanning for threats invisible to her. Sophia studied him, noticing for the first time subtle hint scars on his hands. The way his posture seemed trained for alertness, even the faint tension in his jaw. He had been somewhere he shouldn't have been, had done something he shouldn't have done. Yet he carried it all, as though survival was second nature. "Who sent them?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. "The men. The third man. Someone is behind all this." Ethan exhaled, slow and deliberate. "People who don't like loose ends." His voice was calm, but every word carried gravity. He paused. "I used to be someone else. A different life. Rules, orders, targets. I thought I left it behind." His gaze met hers briefly. "Turns out, it doesn't let go." Sophia swallowed hard, trying to process the intensity of what he was saying. She had faced boardroom battles, hostile takeovers, and ruthless competitors, but this was different. This was raw, dangerous, and undeniably personal. She realized she was drawn not just to the man who had saved her, but to the mystery he carried. She leaned back, letting the noise of the cafe fade around her. "Why me? Why intervene?" she asked. Ethan's hands tightened slightly around the cup he held. "Because I saw you in danger," he said finally. "And when someone's about to be taken from the world without warning, you don't think about status or wealth. You act." He paused, letting the words hang. "I didn't know who you were at first. I didn't need to. You were just in front of me." Sophia's chest tightened. The CEO, the billionaire heiress, had spent years controlling every variable, but here, control had slipped entirely. "So you just acted," she murmured, "without knowing anything about me." "Exactly," Ethan said quietly, almost to himself. "You don't get to plan everything." His gaze shifted outside again, scanning the street. Not everything worth saving. Sophia realized something in that moment. This wasn't a story of a beggar saving a CEO. It was something deeper. A man who had lost parts of himself, carrying secrets, strength, and survival instinct in a world she didn't yet understand. And she found herself wanting to know it all, to see it, to understand it, even if it terrified her. A memory flared briefly, unbidden. Sophia as a child, her father teaching her to be alert in the world, always calculating risk, always aware of danger, never letting vulnerability show. And now she recognized it. Ethan shared that same instinct. His survival wasn't luck. It was trained, precise, methodical. And yet, beneath it, there was a raw humanity that drew her in. "Ethan," she said softly, "tell me everything." He looked at her, his eyes unreadable, a shadow of a past life flickering across them. "Everything?" he asked, almost as a challenge. "Yes," she said firmly. "I need to understand." And in that quiet corner, surrounded by the noise of an indifferent city, the first threads of trust and something deeper began to weave between them. Fragile but undeniable, foreshadowing a bond neither could yet name, but both felt pulling them closer into the storm that was coming. Night fell over the city, but for Sophia, sleep was impossible. The penthouse lights glowed faintly, casting long shadows across the floor, as she reviewed the security footage again, noticing things she hadn't seen before: the subtle hand signals, the timing of each attacker's approach, the way Ethan anticipated each move like he had rehearsed it 100 times. She felt a shiver run down her spine. Whoever he was more than a beggar. He was trained, precise, dangerous, and yet, something in him was undeniably human, vulnerable, even. Her phone buzzed an encrypted message from Ethan. "Meet me. Now. Don't tell anyone." Her chest tightened. She knew that this was the point of no return. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her coat and left the penthouse, stepping into the night where every shadow felt alive. Ethan waited on the edge of a quiet park, half hidden behind the skeletal frame of a fountain. The city hummed around them, oblivious to the storm that had followed him here. He didn't greet her with words, just a look, focused, alert, calm. Her eyes traced the lines of his face again, noticing small cuts along his cheek, faint bruises on his hands, the evidence of yesterday, and of many yesterdays before that. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally, his voice low but steady. "It's not safe." "I'm not letting you face this alone," she replied. "You saved me. I need to understand. I need to know who you are." Ethan exhaled sharply, tension evident in the line of his shoulders. "It's complicated and dangerous." His eyes scanned the park instinctively, as if the shadows themselves could strike. "You're a CEO. They see you as leverage. I can't let anything happen to you." Her hand brushed against his sleeve unconsciously. "I trust you," she said softly, the words heavier than they should have been. A flashback hit Ethan, then a memory he hadn't allowed himself to visit in years. A mission gone wrong. A teammate lost because he hesitated. A code of loyalty and survival drilled into him since childhood. That memory defined him, shaped him, and yet tonight, it collided with something unexpected. This woman, fragile yet strong, insisting on standing beside him. "I'm not just trusting anyone," she continued, reading the subtle change in his expression. "You're different. I don't know why, but I feel it. Whatever your past is, I want to understand it. With you." Ethan's jaw tightened. He wanted to resist, protect her by pushing her away. That was safer. But looking into her eyes, seeing the determination and vulnerability mirrored there, he knew resistance would only hurt both of them. "You don't know what you're asking," he said finally. "Once you know, there's no turning back." "I'm ready," she replied firmly. "I'm tired of running from questions, from truth, from connection." Her voice wavered just slightly, betraying how much courage it took to say that aloud. The park grew quieter. The distant city sounds faded as the tension between them thickened. For a long moment, neither spoke, only observing, only feeling the gravity of what had begun. To people from entirely different worlds, drawn together by circumstance, by danger, by an unspoken understanding neither could yet name. And then the subtle sound of shuffle behind the bushes. Ethan's hand moved instinctively to the concealed weapon at his waist, his body pivoting to shield her. Sophia froze, heart hammering. Danger was close again. But the attacker didn't emerge. Instead, a stray cat darted past, and both exhaled. The tension broke, but only slightly. Ethan finally lowered his hand. "That's how it always is," he said softly. "Even a moment of calm can't last. The past doesn't let go easily." Sophia reached for his hand again. "Then let's face it together," she whispered. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself a small, unguarded smile. A bond was forming, not just trust, but something deeper. Fear and adrenaline still lingered, but amid it, a fragile intimacy grew. And as they sat in the quiet of the park, surrounded by shadows and city lights, both knew this night would mark the beginning of a connection that neither danger nor past could easily undo. The next morning, Sophia woke to the hum of the city, had felt anything but awake. Her thoughts were tangled in Ethan, the way he moved, the weight he carried, the way he didn't just save her, he protected her instinctively. She couldn't ignore it anymore. Something about him demanded attention, demanded trust, demanded more. She found him waiting outside a discreet cafe, sitting in the shadow of a tree, eyes scanning the street as if he already knew she would come. When he saw her, his face relaxed just slightly, but the tension in his posture never left. She approached slowly, noting the dirt under his nails, the faint bruises across his arms. "You don't belong here," she said. Almost softly. "I belong where I have to," he replied. His eyes flicked to hers. "You don't get it yet. Once you're in, there's no leaving." Sophia folded her arms. "Then show me. I need to know who you are, what you've done, and why people are after you." Ethan's jaw tightened. He exhaled slowly, memories crashing through him, a past full of operations, betrayal, and missions where trust was a currency he couldn't afford to spend. Each memory sharpened his instincts. Each lesson reminded him that attachment was weakness. Yet here, with Sophia, all that training felt like it belonged to someone else. "I can't show everything," he admitted finally, voice low. "Some things you shouldn't see. Some things you can't unsee. I can handle it," she insisted. Her gaze was unwavering, her posture a mix of authority and vulnerability. "I'm not just a CEO behind a desk. I know danger, I know risk, and I know when someone's being honest with me." Ethan studied her, scanning every micro-expression, every slight movement. She wasn't bluffing. Her resolve, her fear, her curiosity, all of it was real, and it drew him in like nothing else had in years. He leaned back slightly, allowing a fragment of his history to surface. Flashbacks of missions gone wrong, a betrayal by someone he trusted completely, nights spent alone in shadows waiting for orders that never came, that life had made him cold, distant, unyielding. Yet Sophia, her presence here, insisting on seeing the truth, stirred something unexpected. "You really want this?" he asked. "Yes," she said firmly. "I want to understand you. I want to understand why you risked everything for me yesterday, and why you keep showing up in places you shouldn't be." A faint smile flickered across his face. "Risk. It's second nature to me. Survival, loyalty, protection. And yes," he added quietly, almost to himself, "because you mattered. More than anyone has in a long time." The words hit her harder than she expected. She had faced boardrooms, rivals, and threats that could ruin empires, but nothing had ever affected her like this man did. Vulnerable yet strong, secretive yet brutally honest, he was a puzzle she couldn't ignore. Suddenly, a shadow passed behind them. Ethan's body tensed instantly, his hand moving toward a concealed weapon, scanning the street for threats. Sophia's pulse spiked. "Who's there?" she whispered. Nothing emerged. The tension remained, thick and palpable. Ethan's eyes met hers, steady, unwavering. "This world doesn't forgive curiosity lightly," he said. "And now, you've entered it." Sophia's breath caught, but instead of stepping back, she leaned closer. "Then teach me," she said softly, "so I can survive it. With you." Ethan exhaled slowly, the first hint of trust threading through his controlled exterior. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine something beyond survival, a connection, a bond, a spark that might just withstand the shadows lurking behind them. And in that quiet moment, the air between them shifted. Suspense, danger, and desire intertwined, binding their fates tighter than either of them realized. Night came fast, heavier than usual, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Ethan and Sophia moved through the quiet streets, shadows stretching along the walls, their footsteps careful but deliberate. The air was thick with anticipation, a tension neither could shake, and both knew it. Danger wasn't just near, it was closing in. Ethan's instincts, honed over years, kept him alert, scanning every alley, every window, every movement. Sophia, though out of her element, matched his caution, her heart pounding yet steady, eyes sharp, body tense. "They're here," Ethan murmured, barely audible. His hand rested lightly on her back, guiding her toward a side street. "Stay close. Don't make a sound." Sophia nodded, her own fear masked by determination. Every step brought fragments of yesterday, backflashes of the attackers, the third man, the van, and that moment when Ethan had put himself between her and the danger without hesitation. But now it was bigger. The pattern was clear. They had found him, and through him, they could reach her. A figure emerged suddenly from the shadows, and Ethan reacted instantly, positioning himself between Sophia and the stranger. "Identify yourself," he commanded. The figure paused, hands raised slightly, voice smooth and deceptive. "Relax. I'm just delivering a message." Ethan's eyes narrowed, reading the subtle cues: hesitation, too slow footwork. The way the coach shifted, he knew it was a trap. Sophia's breath caught, heart thundering. The stranger produced a small envelope and tossed it toward her feet. Ethan grabbed it midair, opening it carefully. Inside was a photo of her face, mid-motion, with a red X drawn across it. A note followed: "Leave him or lose everything." Sophia's eyes widened. "They're threatening me. Through me." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Exactly. They're testing loyalty, weakness, fear, and they're counting on you to break him." His gaze flicked to her, steady, intense. "Do you understand what this means?" She nodded slowly, processing. Her life, her fortune, her company, all vulnerable because of him, because she had chosen to involve herself. And yet, the surge of protectiveness, the strange pull she felt toward Ethan, wouldn't allow her to back away. "I won't let them use me," she said, voice firm. Ethan's eyes softened briefly, then hardened. "Good, because if you falter, we both lose." He reached for her hand, a fleeting touch, grounding them amid the storm. It was brief, intimate, and yet heavy with unspoken promises. The memory of Ethan's past surfaced: missions gone wrong, colleagues lost, betrayals that had scarred him. Each mission had hardened him, taught him to trust no one. And now, with Sophia, those lessons collided with an unfamiliar feeling: connection, vulnerability, and responsibility. Protecting her wasn't just about survival, it was personal. "Why do you keep coming back?" Sophia whispered as they ducked behind a car, breathing heavy. Ethan's hand lingered over hers. "Because someone has to," he said simply. "And because you matter more than you know." His words hung in the air, fragile yet profound, forcing her to acknowledge the pull between them, the bond forged in danger, the growing intimacy neither could deny. A sudden noise shattered the quieter car door slamming in the distance. Both froze, eyes scanning, bodies coiled, hearts racing. Danger was closer now, the stakes higher, and in that moment, Sophia understood fully. This wasn't just about him saving her anymore. It was about both of them surviving, trusting each other, and facing the threats that would test everything they felt. Ethan's gaze met hers again, unwavering. "We face this together," he said. And Sophia, despite fear, despite the chaos surrounding them, nodded. For the first time, she realized that trust wasn't given lightly. It was earned in fire, in danger, in shared moments like this. And tonight, they were earning it together, step by parallel step. The morning sun stretched across the skyline, casting a golden glow over the city. But for Sophia, the world felt unusually still, as if everything had led to this exact moment. She stood at the edge of her penthouse terrace, the same place where she had once made billion-dollar decisions without hesitation. Yet today, her heart felt heavier, not with fear, but with something deeper, something she had spent years avoiding. Behind her, the glass doors slid open quietly. Ethan stepped in. He paused, not out of uncertainty, but out of awareness, his eyes taking in the space, the height, the world she lived in, vast, powerful, controlled, and yet, as he looked at her, none of it seemed to matter. "You said you wanted to talk," he said calmly. Sophia turned slowly, her expression softer than it had ever been, yet determined in a way that reminded him of the first time he saw her step out of that car, strong, composed, unshaken. "I do," she replied. There was a brief silence, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with everything they had been through: the street, the attack, the nights of uncertainty, the quiet moments that pulled them closer, the truths they had uncovered about each other. Sophia took a step toward him, then another, until the distance between them disappeared. "4 years," she began, her voice steady, but deeply emotional. "I built my life on control, on never needing anyone, on never depending on anything that could be taken away." Ethan watched her closely, saying nothing, but understanding more than she realized. But then, she continued, her eyes locking onto his. "A poor beggar saved me on the street, not knowing who I was, not caring what I had, just choosing to protect me. A faint breath left her lips, and somehow, that changed everything. Ethan's expression shifted slightly, something unspoken moving behind his eyes. "You didn't see a CEO," she said. "You saw me." She reached into her bag slowly. Ethan's gaze followed the movement, alert, instinctive, but this time, there was no danger. Only intention. She pulled out a document. Folded. Precise. And held it between them. "I've faced enemies, betrayal, and loss," she said quietly. "I've trusted people who only saw my wealth, and I learned to shut everyone out." She stepped closer, placing the document gently in his hands. "But you," her voice softened, almost breaking, "you never asked for anything." Ethan looked down at the document, then back at her, confusion flickering briefly across his face. "What is this?" he asked. Sophia took a breath, then said it. "I'm proposing to you." The words hung in the air, unexpected, powerful, irreversible. Ethan's grip on the document tightened slightly. "Open it," she added. He did. Inside, a legally structured transfer. Assets. Equity. Total valuation. $50 billion. Ethan froze, not because of the number, but because of what it meant. "This isn't," he began. "It is," she said firmly, stepping even closer now, her eyes unwavering. "Not as a transaction, not as power, but as truth." A pause. Then, "I don't want to build my life alone anymore." The city stretched behind them, vast and silent, as if even it was waiting for his answer. "I want someone who chooses me, the way you did that day on the street," she continued, without knowing anything, without expecting anything. Her voice dropped softer. "I love you, Ethan." That was the real proposal, not the money, not the document. Ethan exhaled slowly, the weight of everything pressing against him, the past he had tried to bury, the life he never thought he deserved. The woman standing in front of him, offering not just her wealth, but herself. Flashbacks flickered. Missions, loss, guilt, the moment he chose to disappear from the world. And then the street. That moment. The choice he made without thinking. He closed the document, gently. Not rejecting it, but not accepting it for what it was. Instead, he stepped closer, close enough to erase the distance, completely. "I don't need the money," he said, quietly. Sophia's breath caught. He looked directly into her eyes. "But I want you." The words landed, deeper than anything else could have. A tear slipped down Sophia's cheek, not from sadness, but from something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Relief. Ethan reached up, brushing it away gently, his touch careful, grounding. "We do this," he continued, his voice steady. "We do it together, not because of what you have, but because of what we are." Sophia nodded slowly, her heart full in a way that made everything else feel small. And in that moment, the poor beggar who rescued a beautiful lady on the street, and the powerful CEO who learned to love again, chose each other. Not for wealth. Not for status. But for something far more rare. Something real. Far below, the city moved on, unaware that above it, two lives had just rewritten their future. But somewhere, in the shadows of that same city, eyes were still watching, because their story was never going to be that simple.